Hey everyone, I'm Dan Sege from Hydro Ottawa, and I'll be hosting the ThinkEnergy podcast. So here's today's big question. Are you looking to better understand the fast-changing world of energy? Join me every 2 weeks and get a unique perspective from industry leaders as we deep dive and discuss some of the coolest trends, emerging technologies, and latest innovations that drive the energy sector. So stay tuned as we explore some traditional and some quirky facets of this industry. This is the ThinkEnergy podcast.
When you think of AI or artificial intelligence, what images come to mind? The Terminator, Ex Machina, Blade Runner, or perhaps Iron Man's virtual assistant Jarvis? Or maybe, like Elon Musk, AI scares the bejesus out of you. We all know that AI isn't just transforming movies. Scary or not, it's transforming our reality and our future. Artificial intelligence is being used to make decisions about our lives, whether we like it or not. And the energy sector is a prime example of how advancements in AI technology is changing how we interact with each other and our customers. AI now drives the likes of smart voice assistants, social media monitoring, conversational marketing platforms, and chatbots, just to name a few. Most of us have used chatbots. They provide immediate assistance, emulating the knowledge and charisma of the human agent. Sound familiar? So here's today's big question. While Hollywood depicts AI as a human-like robot that takes over the world, can current evolution of AI technology help consumers understand how to reduce their energy usage, make renewables better, and/or improve communications? To expand on how artificial intelligence is evolving, I have Colton Marshall joining me today. Colton is the project manager at KUBRA IQ and Incident Watch. Colton, welcome to the ThinkEnergy podcast. So maybe you can start by providing us, our listeners, a quick snapshot of who you are and what you do. What's KUBRA about?
Sure. Well, thanks again for inviting me. It's really nice to be here. So my name's Colton Marshall. I'm a product manager at a company called KUBRA. We kind of specialize in customer experience software, billing and payments solutions for mainly the utility industry. And I started out as an engineer. I worked as an engineer, software engineer for most of my career, moved into product management in the last few years. And my core portfolio is centered around AI technology, so specifically chatbots and messaging, customer service messaging, things like that. I have a whole portfolio of products, but really my core focus is that currently.
Okay. I think before we start, we should do a level set. How about you provide our listeners with a quick definition on the following buzzwords? We have AI, that's artificial intelligence. We have chatbots. We have NLP, natural language processing, machine learning, and smart audio. Also, maybe you can tell us how these all work together.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, they're all kind of, like you said, they're a little bit beyond buzzwords. I feel like people are starting to get a general understanding of them and what they are. Maybe we still have a ways to go in that, but they all fit sort of under this umbrella of AI. And when we talk about AI, we're talking about essentially just the simulation of human intelligence, which is kind of a difficult thing to define. So, human intelligent, what does that mean? Well, machines that can think like humans, mimic their actions, make decisions, problem solve, learn, quote unquote. That's sort of what we're talking about when we're talking about AI. And machine learning is basically just a subcategory of that. So we're talking about computer systems that can perform tasks without first being programmed to do that task. So if you think about traditional software, it requires an engineer or developer to go in and write out the explicit logic of the program. We're going to do this in this case, we're going to do this in this case, and essentially just lay out those set of instructions that define the logical underpinning of that system. So how inputs are handled, how data is manipulated, and so forth. And formally speaking, machine learning is basically just a set of algorithms that are capable of recognizing patterns in large data sets and making inferences or creating associations based on those. So that's really all machine learning is it's just a set of mathematics algorithms that allow people to train machines. So there's also a concept, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but there's a concept of supervised versus unsupervised learning. So supervised learning is essentially, you set the machine loose on an input. It tells you what it thinks, how it thinks the input applies based on the current context of what it's trying to do. And then a human will go in and say, yes, that's correct, or no, that's incorrect. And, here's another example of how it might be correct if you were to, analyze it in this way. So you're growing that training set and giving that system more and more data to learn on. Unsupervised learning is more cutting edge. It's more the idea that you can essentially set a system loose on a set of data and allow it to kind of create its own ideas about what's the important part of that data, what sort of associations to make. It's really interesting. And again, I don't want to bore people with too much of a technical explanation, but it's essentially, if we're talking about natural language processing, that's a concept that we generally use to describe a form of supervised learning, which is taking these generic, kind of machine learning algorithms that are capable of recognizing patterns and applying them to language. So, these are generic. They're not necessarily programmed to understand English or Spanish or anything like that. But if we give them enough examples of how someone might convey a certain idea, then the algorithm can start to recognize the linguistic patterns around that idea. So let's say you're someone who, you really like ordering clothes online, or you like ordering your Starbucks coffee, and we want to create a bot that understands how to order someone coffee. We first have to provide that bot with a bunch of training examples that show the bot what someone might say if they're trying to order coffee. And then over time, as more and more people interact with that bot, we're able to see new input, and we're able to help the machine classify that input. So if it receives something that it doesn't understand, and we say, oh yeah, that is actually a valid way of ordering a cup of coffee, then we add that to the training set. And it essentially gives this machine the way to extract what we call an intent, which is like the user's intent. What are they trying? What are they intending to do? So that's kind of how that all works together, is you have AI at the top level, kind of being this umbrella category of technology, and machine learning is basically just a subcategory of that. And NLP is an application of machine learning, and all of that works together to create a chatbot that uses NLP. And like smart audio, smart speakers, we're essentially just enabling chatbots, and we're enabling that conversational interface via something that is typically just a sort of output device. So rather than being simply a speaker output, we're allowing a microphone to be integrated that can provide input and allow users to interact with that underlying technology. So that's a long-winded way of saying it's all kind of bundled together there in a kind of a hierarchy. We step down through the technology and the different categories of technology until we get to the actual user experience.
Why do you think that artificial intelligence is so important?
It's a tough question. I think like the advent of AI is one of the most consequential events probably in human history. I don't really know if we're able to fully appreciate or really properly estimate the impact or importance of it from our perspective now, because we're in such the early stages of it, that looking forward, we're dreaming and we're thinking in these sort of science fiction-y ways that, we don't know what the future holds, but we like to make a lot of predictions. There's a lot of doomsaying about this sort of artificial general intelligence, AGI. That's the big, that's really a buzzword. And when it comes to people talking about the potential cataclysmic effects of, rampant AI. And it is a scary thought, but I think we're a long way off from that if we ever can even get to that point. But I think if we want to understand the biggest impact, maybe in the near future, how it'll affect us in our lifetimes and maybe our children's lifetimes, we have to think about looking back, how many manual tasks have we automated in the last century or so? We've automated a ton of time-consuming manual tasks like washing clothes, washing dishes, manufacturing, farming, cooking. All of these tasks that used to take people a lot of time have been automated by the application of specialized machines. So we can sort of think of AI as offering the same thing, but for time-consuming cognitive tasks. So the discovery, the analysis, the organization of data, pretty much every cognitive task that we perform on a daily basis requires us to do one of these things or a combination of these things. And I think tasks like, booking travel, investing our money, researching, paralegal work, things like that, all of these can be supplemented or completely replaced by applying a sort of weak AI, which is just a way of saying AI that's specialized for one specific and simple task or set of tasks. That's what we call a weak AI. So I think over the next, few decades, we'll start to see more and more inroads being made in terms of weak AI coming into established industries and shaking them up and providing a way of automating tasks that used to take humans a lot of time.
How are those technology advancements shaping customer expectations and conversations? How can they improve our lives?
I think we have kind of an interesting habit as humans, and all of us as consumers especially, we raise our expectations as soon as a certain piece of technology becomes ubiquitous. As soon as we encounter something that really raises the bar of what we can expect from technology, we immediately kind of start to expect that all the time. So we have more computing power available to us in our pockets now than entire organizations had just a few decades ago. So this access to information has kind of opened our minds to the possibilities of what technology can do. And we start to think about, well, why can't this be automated? We start to think about tasks in a new way. Why can't things be easier? Why can't things be automatic? So it's now a normal question to ask those when it comes to somewhat complex tasks. And I think it's made us less patient. We kind of expect everything to be increasingly faster and cheaper and more available, but we have AI coming in to help us with that. So, our expectations are always increasing as, we get more and more access to what was previously very expensive and, privileged technology. And with that, our expectations are always rising. The bar is always being set higher. And AI has the potential to really help us, not have our expectations unmet.
So originally, chatbots were criticized as impersonal and not always being accurate. How have they evolved?
I think there are a few big use cases. I think the number one use case in an enterprise environment, especially for targeting customer satisfaction, is just the automation of basic customer service tasks. So, paying a bill, managing your account, placing orders. These are things that can take a long time on the phone. They can take less time on, a computer, on a website. But especially on the phone, if we're talking about how much time customer service reps spend handling basic tasks when they could be helping other customers with more complex problems that actually do require a human intervention, that extra time on the phone is frustrating to the customer. It's frustrating to the customer service rep because they have to do these repetitive things over and over again. And it's expensive for the company. I mean, every minute that a customer spends on the phone with a customer service rep is way more expensive than if they could accomplish the same thing using a chatbot or using a piece of technology that's more automated. So I think definitely removing the barriers between what a customer needs to do when they're interacting with the company and how many complex steps they have to take to get there. How many people do they have to interact with? What things do they have to know? All of that is really useful for improving customer satisfaction with chatbots.
Colton, what are some of the top challenges to overcome in voice AI adoption?
I think consumer trust is one of the biggest challenges. And I also think we need some advancements in kind of the general understanding of these technologies. I talk to a lot of people, I give a lot of demos. I talk to a lot of clients who really don't understand the technology because it's complicated and we don't have a good way of representing it in visual or easy to understand ways. So people don't really understand how chatbots or conversational AI works. They think it understands English, or they think they can kind of say whatever to it and it should be able to handle it. They think that it understands what it's saying to the user, which is not usually the case. We're trying to bridge that gap between what the public's understanding of the technology is and what the technology actually is capable of. And that, I think, really helps set consumers' expectations. Like, what can I actually use a chatbot for, and what do I need a person for? And if we can align those expectations with the reality of what chatbots are capable of, that'll really help, I think, with adoption, because people will start to understand where chatbots fit in, and they won't just start trying to generally apply them to every problem they have.
Which business sector do you think might see greater adoption or growth of voice technology?
I think absolutely anything that is customer service oriented. The service industry, things like Starbucks has chatbots now that you can place your favorite order. Even retail. I think any industry where the customer is interacting directly with the company or directly with the organization is seeing a huge move towards voice AI and towards offloading a lot of that traffic that would typically come to customer service reps.
I read something in Forbes a short while ago. It basically states businesses might be tempted to wait until voice technology matures, but companies that adopt voice strategies as a long-term play will benefit from the first mover advantage. What are your thoughts on that? Can you expand on this just a wee bit?
So yeah, I think Forbes is right. There is this kind of calculation that a lot of companies are making right now, and I think that happens with every really groundbreaking new technology that starts to push its way into industries. They're afraid of doing it wrong and tarnishing their reputation. They've been doing the same thing for decades, and they don't want to rock the boat. But I think doing it right absolutely benefits companies from a first mover perspective. But it's easy to do it wrong. So there's definitely an honest assessment that companies have to make about their capabilities when it comes to implementing the technology, determine if it's something that they can do, determine if it's something that another company might be able to help them with. And eventually the first movers are going to set the market's expectations. So if you're slow to do that, then you will be behind. But there is a balance to be struck there. You don't want to do it wrong, but you don't want to be too slow on it.
The voice groundswell is approaching land. Google and Alexa are quickly becoming home staples. Do you think companies will be able to build brand trust with voice technologies? Will the use of human voice be a big factor in building that trust?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it will. I think human voice is a big factor. We tend to trust human-to-human communication more, I think, especially when we're speaking directly to a person or a device. The more human we can make our voice assistants, it'll help customers get less frustrated with them because we tend to treat humans nicer than we treat machines and devices. And I think it just fosters a more natural interaction. I think that'll go a long way towards trusting these devices and making sure that they're adopted and present in pretty much every home.
Okay, Colton. I want you to look into your crystal ball here and make a prediction for us. Will voice search dominate in 2020? Are we there yet? What should organizations be looking at right now?
I think 2020 is going to be a big year for voice search and for chatbots. I absolutely think organizations should be taking voice search and chatbot technology into account when they're making strategic decisions for this year and for the foreseeable future. Again, I think it comes down to an honest assessment. Don't jump in with both feet into a new technology unless you're, confident that you can implement it in a way that will create a valuable and useful experience for your users and your customers. And some companies, they can maybe get a little overzealous with that. a few years back, Microsoft released a chatbot on Twitter that essentially within a day of interacting with Twitter users, it started to become pretty vitriolic and kind of an angry chatbot. So, I think if you go into it without making the proper calculations and determinations first, then it's going to be difficult. But it absolutely should be part of, I think every organization that values their customer satisfaction, values the customer interaction and the customer experience. It's going to be a crucial part going forward, I think.
The way we search is evolving. Voice assistants are adapting to a more conversational tone and recognizing long-tail keywords. How can companies optimize their content for this sophisticated voice search?
It's a tough problem. Optimizing content for conversational user experience is difficult because we don't have the screen real estate available to us like we do in standard graphical applications. So we kind of are really reliant on the customer's attention span and how much they're willing to read or listen to. And everyone's a little different. So you have to find a balance where, we provide informational content that isn't prolix or verbose. We still have the information the customer cares about without losing their attention. And that requires a lot of tweaking and testing. The optimization is the right word for it. You really have to put an experience out there, see how your customers interact with it, see where the experience is failing, and make small tweaks. And sometimes it's as simple as, changing a word or removing a sentence. Language-based user experiences, they're a different beast entirely than standard visual content. So it requires a lot of tweaking and testing. Like I said, it's something I think companies shouldn't take lightly.
Leveraging 4G connectivity, GM announced that in early 2020, millions of owners will have an added feature, a new in-vehicle Alexa experience. Do you think, Colton, the availability of voice assistant in fully connected vehicles will be a game changer for greater adoption by the masses?
Definitely, yeah. We're seeing kind of this idea of what we call ambient computing really coming. It's a quiet idea. I don't think a lot of people understand what we mean by that, but like ambient computing at its core is sort of the idea that your hardware, your software, and the full user experience, the machine-human interaction, all of this is around the user without them necessarily being conscious of it. So it's kind of invisible to us. We just work in sync with us, and it's symbiotic. So we start to just expect that it's there all the time. I think having that in your car will go a long way towards people starting to want it and adopt it in every other space that they occupy in their life. So we have it in our phones. Obviously, we have it. If we have it in our cars and we have it in our homes, eventually the whole use of this system, it's all interconnected and it's all seamless. We no longer are thinking about, I have to go to my office to, type on my computer. Instead, I have this ambient computing network all around me of all these devices and the software, and I can just speak. And so I think if you put that in a car, absolutely it starts to drive that expectation because people like using it in their cars. They want to use it everywhere. I think that's definitely something we'll see.
This technology frontier is sure to be transformative, but one thing continues to dominate and fuel many discussions. Besides hostile voice assistants taking over the world, we are hearing more around the issues of privacy and security. What are your thoughts on this, Colton?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's a natural consequence, I think, of people letting a microphone that's always listening, into their homes. We're so conscious of what we say all the time, and especially with the more and more connected we become, we always are trying to make sure we're not saying the wrong thing, and we don't want things we say in private to be available, for the public to see, or even for large companies to see. So I think a big part of it is fostering that trust, fostering that adoption through a focus on privacy. We've already seen some of the large tech companies like Google and Facebook really kind of making big efforts towards keeping their users' data more private. Obviously, the last few years there's been a lot of discussion about how private is your data when Facebook's selling it or when Google's selling it. So we need to provide that peace of mind to customers if we really want every connected home in America to install microphones that are always listening to them or cameras that are always on, things like that. The adoption of smart speakers has been rapid, but I think there are going to be a lot of holdouts who lack trust in the technology and the companies pushing it. And it's important to foster that trust. And I think you do that with a greater focus on privacy and security.
Okay, we're just about done. So here's my last question, Colton.
All right.
What keeps you up at night?
Honestly, I think kind of what I was talking about earlier, there's this constant problem of trying to solve how do you align. I'm trying to solve this constant problem. How do you align? Oh, sorry. I kind of flubbed that a little bit. You mind if I start over? All right. So I think the problem that I think about a lot, when I go home after work, I have a lot of difficult conversations with clients and with consumers trying to align their expectations with what the new technology is capable of. And there's just not a lot of useful tools and information out there that can properly convey what we're talking about when we talk about chatbots and AI and all this technology. And setting consumer expectations is going to be really, really important to making sure that the overall user experience doesn't break down. That's a problem that bugs me a lot because I see so many interactions with chatbots, especially with the chatbots that we deploy here, where users are, not reading or not understanding the chatbot, or just, they really have a problem comprehending what the chatbot can and can't do. And it's a really complex problem to try and get them up to speed without requiring that they, know everything that we know about chatbots. So I spend so much time talking to people about helping them understand, how the technology works and how it meets their expectations and how it maybe doesn't meet their expectations. And that is a constant battle.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had fun. If someone wanted to reach out, how would they connect?
Well, thanks again for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure. If someone wanted to reach out and contact me, I'm always available via KUBRA. You can send me an email at my work email. That's colton.marshall@kubra.com, KUBRA. Feel free to reach out and connect. As you can probably tell from my answers on this podcast, I like to talk about this stuff. So I find it interesting, and I'm always interested in hearing what people think about, the new trends we're seeing in the industry.
Thank you for joining us today. I truly hope you enjoyed this episode of the ThinkEnergy podcast. For past episodes, make sure you visit our website, hydroottawa.com/podcasts. Lastly, if you found value in this podcast, be sure to subscribe. Anyway, this podcast is a wrap. Cheers, everyone.